Can the Prime Minister confirm that the Morrison-Joyce government's so-called plan for net zero comes with net zero modelling, net zero costs beyond 2030 and net zero legislation?
That was, of course, the Labor Party arguing very fair questions, but remember, it's their own policy about net zero that is uncosted and all the rest of it. This is a shell game that Labor's trying to play to pretend that theirs is fully costed, fully worked out. They don't have a policy for 2030. So you've got to assume their previous policy of 45% reductions is their policy. Otherwise, what are they going to do? Match the government and then match the government on net zero 2050, which of course means nothing changes. Third time lucky, the Prime Minister in question time today.
What doesn't get us there, Mr Speaker, is taxes and mandates and laws telling people what to do and what they can't do, Mr Speaker, on their farms, in their businesses, in their factories, in their homes, Mr Speaker. That's not what our plan does. The reason Labor doesn't like our plan, Mr Speaker, is because there's no taxes in it. They don't like our plan, Mr Speaker, because there's no mandates telling people what to do and regulations trying to control their lives. That's why Labor doesn't like our plan, Mr Speaker.
So the Prime Minister thinks that he can find the middle way through this issue. I know many of you disagree, but that's the play, that's the way he's going, that's what I'm talking about here. But can we call BS on one thing? I've got to try to limit the swearing here. I am sick of reading headlines like this that we saw today in the Australian newspaper. It's not a knock on the Oz, it's a knock on the stories, which is investors push for greater climate ambitions. They warn of capital flight. Sorry, which government is standing in the way of somebody who wants to invest in renewable energy? None. Which government is standing in the way of lower carbon emissions technology in agriculture? None. Who's doing it in transport? None. Who's doing it in cars? None. So this argument is about what? We want more money from the taxpayer to invest in something that is guaranteed to be built, to be opposed by very few, where local councils will tick and flick this stuff, where state governments will help you come and cut the ribbon, and where the federal government may not even have a say in what happens at that local level. If you back the technology, use your own money. If you back the technology that you want to use, if you back a project, then go to a private financier and pay for it. I'm sick of hearing billionaires say the government has to do more. The government can set the overall target, but as you heard from the Prime Minister, demands like this will result in more rules, tighter targets, more regulation. That's the choice with Labor. So again, I understand the people that are really annoyed, those that are throwing their toys out of the cot, but in the end it is a choice between Team Red and Team Blue, even if you're going to vote minor party first. At some point, you have to rank the parties. That's just the system. Otherwise, your vote for a minor party won't count. And the Prime Minister's bet, and I think it's a reasonable one, because guess what? I want them to win. Would you hear anyone else say that? I want them to win. I think they're better than the Labor Party. I think they're more trustworthy on things like China that really matter. But the business community demanding somehow government should give them more money, well, no. You can have the policy settings that help you with a guarantee of which way you want to go over the next 30 years. They are trying to get more out of a Labor government. That would be the consequence of you changing your vote. That's the truth, whether people like it or not. And what about some of the crazies on the internet? Even people like Lee Sales say that hardcore lefties are some of the nastiest people on Twitter, and they go after you if you are even remotely fair. This was the reporting on the ABC News channel yesterday afternoon about the net zero policy as announced by the Prime Minister.
The fact that Scott Morrison got a deal on climate and the fact that he's actually still the Prime Minister is a significant achievement given Australia's long and torturous history with climate policy. For the first time in 14 years now, the Coalition and Labor are united on one key climate element. They're both behind net zero by 2050.
But of course, they're not united on 2030. The federal government's position seems to be to do more than the Labor Party, but the Labor Party will have to outdo them to impress all of their lefty mates or underdo them, which of course will mean that they're not going to please their lefty mates. The problem is not for the government, the problem is for Labor. Whether you believe it or not, that is the truth. But the reaction to that straight, normal reporting that happened on the ABC yesterday was this reaction from social media. One bloke said that Jane Norman's relentless cheerleading of Scott Morrison is just embarrassing. She just was talking about the obvious facts. Another one says, one of an entire generation of journalists who have no concept of Labor economic management credentials, pretending that she was just parroting the words of the Prime Minister. Seriously.